Good morning, everyone. This is Holly Underwood with the Hardin County Chamber and Business Alliance. I'd like to thank you for joining us this morning and welcome you to our 2020 legislative breakfast, our virtual breakfast that we're going to have today. I would like to thank you for joining us. I'd like to thank Jesse for coordinating this event. I have a couple of housekeeping notes to share before we get started. I'm going to share the audio info on the screen. If you have no problem at all hearing the content using the speakers and microphone on your computer, that's fine. If you're more comfortable, you can also join the audio by phone. These tools can be used together, so if you are only joining us by phone and would like to also see what we're displaying on the screen, we do have some slides today. You can still go back to the invitation for this event and join the online session and follow along on your screen and also be part of the call. As far as getting to know GoToMeeting, I'm not sure how many of you have got a chance to participate in one of these online meetings so far. I know there's several tools available. I'd like to encourage everybody to take a minute and get to know the control panel for GoToMeeting. There's a presence panel where you can see thumbnails of people who are choosing to show their webcams. There's a list of all the people who are on the call. There's also a chat feature, and we will be using the chat for questions throughout this session. So anybody who has a question, make yourself familiar with the chat area, and also notice that there is an option to submit your question or your chat comment to either the whole group, everyone, or to a specific person. So just take note of that. And there's a settings where you can check and make sure that your speakers and your microphone are optimized. So we are going to be passing the mic around today, and just bear with us. When technology is involved, we know that we need to be patient. So I think that is all I have as far as housekeeping for right now. I will go ahead and turn the presentation over to Colt.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the legislative breakfast. Obviously, this is not the way we usually do it. We're usually at the plaza eating some great breakfast and having coffee and sharing conversation. But we are glad that we are able to do this remotely as provided by the chamber. So thank you for joining us this morning. Hopefully, I guess nobody had to drive, so hopefully you didn't have to scrape your windows off. If we can head on to the next slide, Holly, we want to make sure, of course, that we first thank our President's Club sponsors who make our in-person events possible, but also these remote events possible. So without their support, we would not be able to provide the programming. The Chamber would not be able to provide the programming that they are able to provide. So again, thank you to the President's Club sponsors. And with that, we will jump right into it. We do ask that everyone kind of keep track of time. We want to make sure that we're cognizant of everyone's time and have everyone out of here on time. So these first few elected leaders will have around 3 to 5 minutes, and Holly will be keeping track of that. And there will be a little box in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen letting you know when that time is up. So we would just ask that you kind of keep your comments concise because we do have a lot to get to as the circumstances provide. So with that, we'll open the floor up to the Mayor of the City of Kenton, Mayor Lynn.
Did I draw number 1?
To be really honest with you, Mayor, I was not in charge of putting this together, so you'll have to take that up with somebody above my pay grade.
Great. So evidently I'm talking about what happened and how we're working through this situation. Is that correct?
That Jesse might be able to provide more guidance on that, but to my understanding, it's the floor is yours to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Deal. Okay, then as a city, we're rolling just as normal, except we're much more cognizant of spending. We've definitely put a freeze on all new spending. We certainly have a lot of projects that were already mid-going prior to all this, so we're finishing those up. We're looking at several templates on how to determine what our budget loss, our revenue loss will be. We've looked at 3 models so far. We're going to get together next week and look at another one. Being proactive there. We work a lot. We're probably 50% staffed up here. The other 50% is working from home. And that's working out very well. Thank goodness we got in on the remote ahead of the curve. We were already planning on that, and then this hit. So we're blessed that people can work from home, and that's turning out to be very, not only productive, but keeps everybody safe. Let's see, all of our departments are split in half, so we do a rotation on street crew. They're on a rotation, same with water department, sewer department, work a week, off a week, work a week, off a week. Keeps everybody safe and apart. As far as project phase 1, last night was pretty, I don't know, it was a good thing. The storm sewer is now complete on phase 1 on Main Street. So we're definitely a little bit ahead of the curve. We've had great weather. They've not had to have a no stop working date as of yet, which is phenomenal. Only ran into a few problems as far as what's around the fire station with how the soil stabilization was, but they worked through it. So that's pretty good. We're starting to look at Detroit Street. Again, it's going to bear with the city. We know it's rough. We understand it's rough, but that's about what we can do until we grind that off and repave it after the project's complete. But we'll just have to weather the storm, and instead of driving 50 mile an hour down through town, hopefully we can enforce and get on top of that because it's a mess. Let's see, other than that, I would say we're also looking at how we can work with our small businesses, what we could provide. We're looking into some other communities through several entities, financial institutions, community foundations, how we can maybe help with small business. It's very preliminary, but I've sat in on a couple meetings with Small Nation and how other communities are helping the small business, because we know how vital that small business is to our community and how desperately we need them. So if we can help them in any way, I would like to be very proactive and at least keep their head above water and their lights on after this. So that's kind of what we're working on citywide. And that's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. And certainly hoping you and your crews, fire, police, and the folks working in the infrastructure are staying safe out there. Speaking of staying safe, this is going to be somebody that we hope always stays safe, and his guys always stay safe, and that's Sheriff Keith Everhart. Sheriff.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you, Sheriff.
Okay. We're just taking it day by day. I've been blessed with a tremendous staff who's very dedicated. So they're taking care of business. My biggest thing lately is just making sure that everybody has enough PPE to go around, working with the EOC and the health department and EMA on that. To be honest, our calls to service have gone down about 35% from this time last year. So I can only take that as Hardin County folks are doing what is requested of them by the governor and staying home for the most part. But honestly, I don't have a lot to add. We're just taking it day by day and plugging through. Working on a few things on the state level. Unfortunately, this whole COVID-19, if you're a law enforcement officer, you get and you would get this illness and die, you would be considered a line of duty death, and therefore the family would get a lot of benefits from the federal level. But unfortunately, the dispatchers and the corrections officers are not in that group, and I find that offensive, to be honest with you. So I'm working on the state level, trying to get those groups of people named first responders so they would be able to get some of those benefits. You know, we've seen a couple of corrections officers throughout the state succumb to this illness, and they're not going to get the same benefits as someone that is a certified peace officer, but yet we're forcing them to be in close contact with people for 8 to 12 hours a day. And I don't see the wisdom there. And I think we're sort of selling our people up the river. So that's my big tilting at the windmill right now, is trying to get these folks covered in case something drastic would happen to them. So aside from that, I don't have much.
All right, very good, Sheriff. And of course, we wish you and your team all the safe and best wishes, and hopefully everyone stays healthy over there, because we certainly need you. We move on now to Hardin County Commissioner Roger Crowe.
Good morning. Hardin County, I think, is in a lot better shape than some of the counties around the state. We were financial before this whole thing started, so I think we're going to be able to weather this health crisis a lot better. However, we are still going to be meeting with the auditor to for the rest and see how that impacts our appropriation. We have had some with the casinos being closed. Of course, there's no play, there's no taxes, so the county's going to be losing that revenue for at least one quarter. We don't know what the impact is going to be yet on sales tax. The sales tax collection runs about 3 months behind, and so we can only see those numbers for March in about June or July. So we won't know for a while what that's going to do. And sales tax is a huge part of the county's revenue. You know, we know stores have been closed. We also know that the internet sales are now taxable and collectible for the county. So that is going to help a lot. I think there's been a lot of internet purchases, and I think that's really going to aid the county in our financial outlook. One highlight, I guess you could call it, is that Hardin Hills right now is at capacity, and we have a waiting list started. It's many, many years since we've had a full facility and a waiting list established. We've stayed healthy out there. I knock on wood for that. I want to keep it that way, because you know, residents of Hardin Hills are very, very fragile community. And as you've seen in the news, once COVID gets into the nursing facility, kind of spreads like wildfire. And our administration is doing a great job keeping that facility safe and doing all they can to make sure that it's one of the crown jewels. So other than that, the county is open business. You may have to call in or knock on the door. Most of the doors in the courthouse are closed, but I think all of them have a box outside, materials for them. You can put that in the box and they will work with you. We have some office hours that are restricted. The building is open for business, and you can still conduct necessary business as you need to. So thank you for the opportunity this morning, and hope everyone stays healthy.
Thank you, Commissioner, and we wish the same to you. I do just want to remind everyone, if you think of questions, we would ask that you send them to us. We do have some question and answer time built in here at the end, and we are staying on track. So if you think of questions, we'd ask you to just drop that in the chat, and then I will pose those to whoever they're directed at a little bit later on in the program. So you're welcome to do that. We move along now to Hardin County Recorder Brenda Rainsburg.
Good morning. I just wanted to report in and let you know, as of March 23rd, we have made some temporary changes. My office is closed to the general public, but we are here working, busier now than we normally am. But the attorneys and abstractors call ahead before they come in. The out-of-towners, we schedule them an appointment because most of the time, they're driving from out of town and have a long search to do. They're doing the wind turbine and oil and gas searches, so they have to go back 100 years, so that takes time. So we try to make time for them. The local attorneys and abstractors have been wonderful. If they come in or knock on the door, bring my doorbell, because I have a doorbell set up outside, and if they come in and realize that, because I only allow 3 people to come in and search my office at any one time, and they have to keep 6 feet distance. But the local attorneys, if they realize we're busy, they'll leave and come back. It's worked out very well. Let's see, I have adjusted my copy fees to keep the general public from coming in as often as they normally do. I'll email or fax copies up to 10 pages. In our office, we've sanitized our office regularly. I alternate my employees so that we're not all here at the same time, because if one of us gets sick, we're in deep trouble because there's only 3 of us. My office hours are still the same. They're still 8:30 to 4. Some of the other counties have adjusted their hours, but that just kind of bottlenecks things. So this has worked rather well. Again, only allowing 3 attorneys or abstractors in here at one time has not been a real issue. That's about all I have. Like I said, we're all in this together, and be safe and stay healthy.
And we wish the same to you. Thank you, Brenda. We move on now to LuAnne Cooke from Lieutenant Governor John Husted's office. Lou, good morning.
There you go. I think I was muted there. Hey, good morning, everyone, on this nice snowy April day. So I just wanted to, I think a lot of you are getting our updates through the Chamber, through the Alliance, but I just wanted to give you a couple websites for the businesses, and if you can advance that slide, there you go. Okay, the first one I wanted to remind everybody is the Small Business Relief Office. You can see that website is businesshelp.ohio.gov. This office is housed in the DSA area, Director Mahalik's agency, and they're there to help answer and find relief for small businesses. And again, you've heard the number, 950,000 small businesses across the state of Ohio, and they are the lifeblood of all of our communities, our counties in the state. There's also an essential job site that the Lieutenant Governor continues to talk about. This site has been prepared for people to list jobs if they're an essential business, say medical or any of the businesses that are now open can list on that website. You can also go there and look for a job. So some of the students are furloughed from their classes. That would be a good place to go and look. This site is not going to be permanent. It's just through this pandemic that we'll have this job site open. Go ahead and next advance. And one of the other websites, and this has been working very well, and again, it's through the health department has combined with Lydia Mahalik's department, DSA, and it's for dispute resolution. And I want to give you a prime example of this. I know I had several calls about tunnel car washes, and I guess I sort of fielded that when maybe I shouldn't have. I always ask forgiveness later. For those who know me, but I said, if you're servicing the sheriff department, the police department, funeral homes, that's essential. In like a day like today, you're going to have a lot of salt and crap on your. Well, it ended up that the health department, one of the counties said, no, they weren't essential. They couldn't open. And they went to this website and they filled out a dispute and basically stated their case, who their customers were, that you could drive through the tunnel car wash, not touch a soul. So that was a prime example of how this new dispute resolution website department is being used. So if anybody feels, I would just invite anybody to go really in and take a look at it and kind of drive around the website, and you'll see what it's all about. Again, there are several volunteer opportunities available within the state of Ohio. And if you want more information on that, that email, that's an email. It's together@governor.ohio.gov. You basically just put your name in, what you'd like to do, and your address, city that you're in. And again, COVID information is on coronavirus.ohio.gov. It's getting to be a pretty heavy duty looking site. There's a lot of information on that website. That is the website that posts the new numbers every day out of our health department. And of course, you can call, the phone number is there also. Just to say a few things about some of our struggles, unemployment is our big struggle right now, and some of you down there are very aware of that. I've been working with Representative Cross's office every day, and your chamber office, and Jesse. They send me updates every day of people that have called and have concerns that they're either stuck in the system or they started getting their check, they're not getting their checks now. So I submit those every day into the JFS contact that we've been given for that. So that again is one of the real struggles. And as you know, the Lieutenant Governor is starting to work on, a plan for opening, and hopefully that's going to be soon. So good to be with everybody today, and everybody stay safe out there.
Thanks, Lou. And I will just mention that Jesse and Holly have put a lot of those links that Lou just mentioned in the chat window. So if you're needing those resources, just click on the chat icon in GoToMeeting, and a lot of those resources are there for you right there. We move on now to Patrick McCauley from Ohio Treasurer of State Robert Sprague's office.
Well, thank you for allowing me to give a brief report on what's happening with the Treasurer's office today. Treasurer Sprague and his staff, we have been able to continue the day-to-day operations of the office through teleworking and with limited access to the offices in Columbus. So everything is going business as usual for us in that sense. Some of the projects that we've been working on, of course, with the CARES Act and the paycheck payment programs and the other helping our small businesses. We've been working closely with the SBA and our local chambers of commerce to see how our office can be helpful. And we've been leveraging our social media to provide pertinent information to small businesses and those owners across the state. So we're just trying to get out the information to as many people as we can. I know the chambers have been doing a fantastic job on that, but we're doing what we can do in that sense as well. For our local communities and school districts, we've been focusing on the Ohio Market Access Program, also known as OMAP, to see how it can assist with unforeseen capital expenses that have arisen because of this pandemic. Normally that program is for short-term capital projects, but we're seeing if there's anything that we can do to amend that program to see if it can help out our local governments and school districts. Our link deposit programs are still available to help businesses and homeowners. For the businesses, there's a program that can help finance bringing on new employees. So if you're a business that is looking to bring on a couple of more full-time employees or 4 part-time employees, there's a program that can help get you reduced financing to do just that. Where we've got a lot of free time on our hands, if you're looking to do a home project that's going to increase the value of your property, there's a program for that as well called EcoLink that will allow you to get those reduced financing rates for those projects. The Treasurer's Office, we are here to help citizens and businesses. Once the economy is restarted, we're here to help in any possible way. And if anybody feels that there's something that we can do to help them, please feel free to reach out to me and we can assist you in the best way possible, be it as a resource trying to help you find the correct people to talk to in Columbus if you're having trouble finding someone, or if you just need assistance with any of our programs. Please do not hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Patrick. We appreciate that update. We move on now, and I will just put in a note here that our next two guests have a little bit more time, and I'm sure they have a whole wealth of information to share. And we move on first to State Representative John Cross. Good morning, John. John, it does not appear that we can hear you. He's holding up one finger, so maybe changing some settings or something.
Oh, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now, John.
Oh, there you go. Okay, good morning. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. So good morning, everybody, and thank you for, I'd like to thank the Hardin County Chamber and Business Alliance for continuing to have this legislative breakfast. Certainly a timely time to have this conversation and lots to cover. Let me, before we get into the obvious conversation of COVID-19, let me actually back up and talk a little traditionally about what we might have talked about before COVID-19 was some of the work being done in the legislature. I have had about 10 bills, 10 pieces of legislation that I was working in this General Assembly, and 3 of those bills I want to talk about, 2 of which have been signed by the governor and are enacted in law. First is the Tech Cred bill. Many of you know that we worked really hard as a priority in the Ohio House to pass Tech Cred, and you can visit the website techcred.ohio.gov. It really, I think, will be helpful not only when we were at 3% unemployment, but certainly it's still going to continue to be helpful when we have higher unemployment for those who need to, for businesses who need to continue to do training and upskilling. And there, I believe the individual program has been rolled out by the Department of Development for individuals to access dollars. So that will still, those monies, as far as I understand, unless those dollars get cut out, those dollars should be available, and rounds of funding should still be available for businesses to seek help. So that I think was really important to help our workforce. And I think we still need to continue to invest in our workforce, even though we're going through this COVID-19 pandemic. The second piece of legislation, it was probably the most challenging thing I've done as a legislator, was a scope of practice bill. And this was the Certified Registered Nurse Anesthetist bill, House Bill 224. We were very fortunate to have that included in House Bill 197, which was the emergency legislation recently passed by the House and the Senate. The Ohio General Assembly passed to help with the COVID-19 measures. This bill passed out of the House with, I think, about 94 votes, and we had, I think, about 3 or 4 hearings in the Senate committee, and I would have felt confident to know that it would have passed out of the Senate, and we would have had a traditional signing ceremony and celebration. But an unconventional way to pass a bill was during this pandemic. We were able to allow registered nurse anesthetists to have the full scope of their practice. So let me break it down realistically what that means. At the end of the day, during a health crisis, the last thing you need is a turf war between doctors, nurses, and hospitals. And what this really did was allow nurse anesthetists to be on the front lines to deal with patients who need care. And there's a lot of, within health policy, there's a lot of what you can and can't do. And I probably call it more of a turf war, but it was the right thing to do at the right time. And this piece of legislation has been around for 20 years, and we've battled it and battled it and battled it. And so it's very exciting to get that passed and know that there's a lot of nurses who are serving on the front lines during this epidemic and pandemic. And it's going to be very helpful today as well as the future. So I was pleased that got passed. The third bill I would like to still work on is the Family Forward bill. This would allow Treasurer Spragg through his office to use some dollars to help with adoptions. Basically, adoption, and particularly private adoption, can be very expensive for families. We've heard stories of up to $50,000 per child to adopt. And what this does is provide some financial assistance and funding relief, anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 with a low interest loan backed by the state. So you could go to your local financial institution, your local credit union, your local community bank, and get a low interest loan to help fill any kind of financial gap that a family would need to help a loving child be matched up with a loving family for the adoption process. That bill is in a committee in the House. It's ready to go out of the House committee. It'll easily get off the floor. We'll send it over to Senator McCauley and make sure he takes good care of it. And I'm pretty confident that that bill will work its way through the Senate. The challenge we have with all pieces of legislation we're working on is, given the COVID-19, we just don't really know when we're going to be back in session and when we would actually resume normal legislative bills. Certainly, there's going to be a lot of priority bills that take place. Sheriff Everhart talked a little bit about working on dispatchers and corrections officers as first responders. Sheriff, if you need some help with that legislatively, we certainly would be willing to help put our name on that bill and help you with that. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be working through. So I would just be honest with you all. I would probably say all my other bills are probably going to just sit there and die because there's just not enough time, unless we add lots more time to the calendar for session. But I'm confident we can get the Family Forward bill through potentially lame duck. So I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that the Speaker and the Senate President could bring us back this summer for some legislative work. But technically, I think we were scheduled to go till June, and then we were going to be on break till November for lame duck session. So it's just kind of up in the air right now to when we come back. But certainly, when we come back, we'll try to work through as much legislation as we can. The next thing I want to talk about is the Census 2020. Just a reminder, we're all working on the Census 2020 and how important that is. So when the federal government continues to dish out money, state of Ohio, and particularly Northwest Ohio, could benefit from that. So continue to encourage your constituencies and your employees to fill out the 2020 census. The next thing I wanted to talk about was the capital budget. So once again, I might ask Senator McCauley in his presentation to talk a little bit more. He's more of a senior member, although I think I'm older than him. He's got more seniority than I do. He might give us some better guidance on it, but I think certainly the Speaker of the House in a couple interviews gave us some indication that maybe public works projects, infrastructure projects might be helpful at this time to help reboost the economy with construction jobs and investing in it. Certainly, when it comes to some capital projects, what would happen, what wouldn't. I think there's a plus and minuses. Obviously, the capital budget, it's not like those dollars can go into the general revenue fund. So it's just depending on how much debt we want to take in the state of Ohio, how much debt we want to add. But are some of these projects worth pursuing. And certainly I think we need to weigh that because it could help boost our economy. So I'll leave my comments there on the capital budget, and maybe Senator McCauley has some additional thoughts. Cole, I'd like to then kind of kick into the obvious, which is the COVID-19, and a couple things. So obviously we came down. One beautiful thing about state government, as I've got Fox News sitting here watching off to the side and watching our federal partners arm wrestle over the next funding bill that needs to come, because we've obviously heard that they're out of money with a lot of the small business loans. We're going to need some help with unemployment. The nice thing about state government is we understand how to get things done, and we understand how to do it in a bipartisan fashion. We also understand the urgency. So I was really pleased to see that both the House and the Senate, we passed our COVID-19 legislative response package unanimously in both the Senate and the House. And I'm certain that if we have to go back down in the near future to pass any additional legislation, we'll also understand the important urgency of it. The election process. Let's talk about the election process for a second. Again, these are my opinions on the election process, but certainly representing your thoughts and your opinions as part of that is I hope that we can get back to a normal process for the November election. I don't believe a mail-in ballot for November election is where we want to be. So I'm hoping that we could have a sense of normalcy. So as long as the governor or the director of health doesn't shut down the polling locations on the 11th hour in November, which I don't think they will, we should have hopefully somewhat of a normal elections process in November. I also appreciate your patience and your understanding. There was so much confusion, certainly constitutional issues that were dealt with. And I think we'll have a chance to worry about all that later, not to get into a finger pointing contest, but at the end of the day, it's the legislature's job, whether it's 3 in the morning or whenever, we have to get together and determine the election date, time, and location, how we do this. And the reason why we chose April 28th is for 2 simple reasons. First, the Democratic presidential delegates need to be submitted by May 17th, and the Republican presidential delegates needed to be submitted by June 5th. So there was no way to get Democrat support on this bill if we didn't have the elections process come to a conclusion before May 17th to get everything prepared for the presidential delegates. For all those, including myself, who are on the ballot, we certainly understand this is an anxious time for candidates, and I'm hoping that we can get through this process as quickly as we can. If people are, we're going to come up to crunch time for the ballot process too, so if people are still needing ballots, we encourage you to contact the Board of Elections office by phone, and certainly everything has to be postmarked by April 27th. And I believe you can submit it if there is a drop box up until the day of April 28th to be counted. So I'll leave more room for the elections process if Senator McCauley wants to cover that. But also in the COVID-19, and when we return back to the legislature, obviously we're going to be dealing with a bunch of issues, whether it's education, telehealth, all kinds of policies. But one of the things I'm interested in is we have streamlined government as best we can during this crisis. We've gotten rid of a lot of red tape and regulations and mandates. And thanks to Senator McCauley's bill that was included in the budget, it was the 2-to-1 regulation reduction. Well, we certainly even probably doubled down or tripled down on that. I think one of the things we need to carefully do is make sure that we don't put all that back in too quickly, too fast, or even at all. Maybe, to the extent that we keep streamlining government the best we can, we should leverage this opportunity. I look at an issue like COVID-19 is a lot of room for opportunity. A very positive, optimistic approach is, and I told this to our county superintendents, I was on a call just like this. I said, now's the time to take advantage of an opportunity like this to get rid of all those unfunded mandates, all those mandates that cost us money. A good example is the state report card. The school has these report cards that, in my opinion, are flawed and don't do us any good. Well, it cost us, the taxpayers, $30 million in the biennium to produce those report cards. Get rid of those report cards, and that saves you $30 million. Easier said than done, but that's the point. ACT test. Every junior has to take the ACT test. It costs us, the taxpayers, $2.5 million a year to issue the ACT test. Maybe we get rid of the ACT test and allow parents to pay for the ACT test if his or her daughter wants to go to college, then they can pay for it versus us, the taxpayers, paying for it. Those are some small examples we use. So I think now is an opportunity to go through the budget, and as we all worry about cash flow and funding, where can we trim a little bit? We want to look at those pesky regulations that might cost us money. And then that leads me to the task force. So one of the things I've been focused on the last 2 weeks, the speaker has organized a task force in the Ohio House to 24-member bipartisan panel to really engage with businesses throughout our districts and our regions. And what I have done is I've worked with our Chamber of Business Alliance to have a conference call with you all to discuss your thoughts. I've done the same in Hancock County. And I appreciate the Regional Growth Partnership. They set up a call. So 3 committee members who represent Northwest Ohio, we were able to get on a call with 17 counties and hear directly from businesses, small, medium, and large-sized businesses, to hear what does it take to reopen Ohio. So as you all know, I'm a little eager to reopen business because I understand I'm hearing every single day from businesses who are just fearful that they will not have a chance to reopen. It's painful to hear the stories. And so as much as it's painful to hear about the loss of life, it's equally painful to hear the loss of business, the people who might be 60 years of age and 20 years ago went through a crisis, through 9/11 or 2008. And they may not have the amount of time left on life to try to fight back another 10 or 20 years. And so I'm hoping it doesn't take that long, but they're just real stories. And so I'm pleased the governor yesterday finally came out and said, we're looking at the May 1st as a potential to start opening. It coincided well with the president announcing his 3-phase approach, providing guidance on what that would look like. And we're still getting feedback. Let me share with you what I think I've heard from our businesses in Northwest Ohio. First, daycare is important. Obviously, before school lets out for summer break, traditionally, like we normally have, still having daycare open back up is important. Having protective gear available, not necessarily the same that hospitals would use, but certainly making sure that they can keep their employees safe and customers safe with protective gear. And testing. Testing is going to come in all different shapes and sizes, antibody testing and other kinds of testing. So the more testing we have available that's quick and fast for the business community, that would probably help. Then also best practices for businesses. At the end of the day, I've made a comment in the Columbus Dispatch that kind of stuck well with a lot of folks. We have to trust our businesses, our business owners, our healthcare professionals, our doctor practices. We have to trust them to do what is right. Because if they can't put the confidence in their employees and they can't put the confidence in their customers to return back to their places of business to work or to shop, their business is not going to be successful. And so there is a lot of fear out there with constituents. There's a lot of fear to returning back to their employer's workplace. There's a lot of fear to go to a restaurant. We understand there's fear, but you also have to understand that we live with the risks every day. We live with the risks of getting in our car and driving to work, other health-related issues. So my fear from what I'm hearing is if we don't have a plan and we don't have a date to start thinking about opening business, we're going to be even in a worse economic problem than we already are. So there was a lot of pressure put on by the legislative body to get the governor to pivot, and yesterday he did that. So that was, I think, a real positive step because in looking at the data, the curve obviously is coming down. but we obviously don't want to spike back. So does that mean we're going to turn the switch on and magically businesses back in mass gatherings? And no, it's not going to look that way. Probably not going to look that way for 12 or 18 months. But we have to level the playing field. It does not make sense to have Home Depot open and you can go buy gardening tools at Home Depot today, but you cannot go see your oncologist. So the other important thing that I've called for from the governor, I think the senator would agree, and other members have already stated, is we need to get all of our healthcare practices back open quickly. We can't delay treatments to other individuals who need other health-related issues. And in consultation with our hospitals, Hardin Memorial, Blanchard Valley, and other hospitals throughout Northwest Ohio, the demand that they thought they were going to have based on COVID-19 obviously isn't there, and that's a good thing. And so I think they, too, the hospitals, understand how important it is to allow these things to happen. So that's my thoughts on this. And then lastly, with regards to the CARES Act, there's a lot of constituents who are on 1099 or independent contractors. The Lieutenant Governor said that the CARES Act funding for that kind of quasi-unemployment will be available starting May 8th to May 15th. They'll have a new system in place where you can go on and file for kind of a quasi-unemployment assistance for independent contractors. So continue to watch the businesshelp.ohio.gov website. And between Cooke, myself, and others, we'll make sure to notify everybody once that's available, because there's a lot of independent contractors in Hardin County that are looking for that assistance. With that, Colt, I'll turn it back to you, and I appreciate you allowing me to make a presentation.
Well, thank you, John. And John just gave a lot of information, so I do just want to say two things really quick. In the chat, again, there are two links, the census link and also the link for the Hardin County Board of Elections office if you still need to take care of voting and requesting that absentee ballot. Those links are in the chat. And John did have a lot of information. So we will have a dedicated question and answer time for both John and Senator McCulley right after Senator McCulley's report. So make sure you send those questions in the chat window. And with that, we'll turn it over to Senator Rob McCulley.
Thank you, Colt. Can you guys hear me? Great. So I would say going into my remarks, John did a good job of summarizing an awful lot of what's going on at the state level, so I'll try not to be too duplicative. Thank you again, guys, for having this meeting. Thank you for having people come together. I certainly wish we could be at the Plaza Inn enjoying a great breakfast there, but we'll take what we can get at this point. Touching on a few items, H2 Ohio, I know that's something that's pretty pertinent to our area. H2 Ohio is something that I've been told that the funds from that were going to go out into our ag community have been put on hold in light of what's going on at the state level and with our budget and with the governor's call to cut spending by 20%. I don't know if they will be put back into place, but obviously anybody who's familiar with the ag cycle understands that if money was going to go towards preservation practices in the fields, that's going to need to be done here, and that money is going to need to be dispersed here within the next couple months. And if it's not dispersed, then it's probably not going to get done this year, in my opinion. So that money is probably money that's not going to be going forward. The capital budget, John touched on it. At least in the Senate side, there have been no formal conversations as to whether we're going to proceed with the capital budget or not. Certainly, there was we wish it could have been done by now, but at the same time, going forward, every dollar is going to be squeezed pretty tightly. And even if it is debt, there's still money required to service those debt payments. So stay tuned on that. But I would agree with John in that in the event that we do have a capital budget, it's likely to be very streamlined, and it's likely to only take care of the most essential needs of the state of Ohio, not likely to go towards a lot of community projects like we have been discussing with so many of these different communities. I would echo the call for people to complete the census for 2020. The importance of that cannot be understated. We need to make sure we have an accurate count. To put this in perspective, Ohio has gone in consecutive decades from 23 congressional seats in the 80s, 21 in the 90s, 18 in the 2016 and the 2010s. We're likely to go to 15 here in the 2020s. And it's not because we're shrinking necessarily. Our population is remaining relatively stagnant, and that's the problem. Is other states, particularly states in the South, Florida and Texas and others, are growing at a much more rapid clip than we are here in Ohio, and that's causing us to lose representation in Congress. So we are right on the border, to be honest with you, of losing that 16th seat. And so it could be as simple as us getting a higher response rate that ends up with us going ahead and potentially having maintaining that 16th seat in Congress. And so I would urge everybody to do whatever you can to make sure people complete the census. The deadline for that currently is in August. I don't have the date right off the top of my head, but it is in August. People have plenty of time to do it. I filled mine out online right when all of this began in March. And frankly, it took me 5 minutes. Filled it out for my entire family. So anybody who's worried about it taking too much time, that can be dealt with pretty simply. And I want to also now move on to the coronavirus and what our response has been. I sent a letter to the governor on April 13th detailing to him the fact that in my conversations with many businesses and non-business owners alike across the 1st Senate District, there are a lot of people who really wanted to see a plan going forward, really wanted to see what we were going to do to return life back to normal. I think the people of Northwest Ohio and the people of Ohio in general have done an awful lot to help with this social distancing effort. They have embraced the severity of what we're going through, and they have not taken lightly to what's being asked of them and what's being required of them. Certainly, we're going to get anecdotal examples of people not taking social distancing seriously, but we're certainly getting an awful lot of good examples, and frankly, it's working. And I think you don't have to look very far to a lot of the counties around where we are in Northwest Ohio to see that it's working pretty well. With that being said, there are a lot of businesses who've come forward and said, look, I've heard from a lot of essential businesses who've said, look, we've implemented social distancing guidelines. We've implemented best practices as far as keeping our workers safe. It can be done. It can be done with relatively little inconvenience or loss of productivity. And there's no reason to believe that non-essential businesses would not be able to do the same. I've also heard from a lot of essential businesses who have said, look, even though we're open, we are kind of out on the vine here. We're not doing very well. And so in that respect, we tried to do whatever we could to try and convey that message to the governor, because this isn't just about dollars and cents. This isn't just about trying to keep money in a business owner's pocket. This is also about maintaining our system of government. This is also about maintaining the services that we all take advantage of, even at the local level. I don't have to tell the commissioners this, but there's probably not a ton of sales tax being collected right now, especially since most people are buying groceries, which are exempt from sales tax. So in that respect, I do think that, sorry if I see on the chat that we're having some sound quality issues. I apologize for that. In that respect, we need to make sure that we open business back up safely and securely in a way that exercises some strong social distancing guidelines in a manner that will allow people to get confidence to go back out into the economy, go back out into society in a safe manner, because it's not just about the small businesses. And I would echo John's concern that you see a lot of businesses. If you started a business in 2000, had to go through the 9/11 downturn, had to go through the recession in the late 2000s, and now this, depending on your age, you may not have the same amount of time that other people have to recover. And so, but at the same time, we have schools that rely on these revenues. We have other things that rely on these revenues as far as local government budgets and things of that nature. And so we need to do that to avoid all of those systems that we rely upon from shutting down as well. So I'm happy to see that the governor did what he did, that he gave that May 1st date. I'm anxious to hear the details of his plan. I'm anxious to hear what he's going to say as far as phasing them in. And I think it's instilled an awful lot of needed confidence and hope in our business community. I would also like to extend my office. You know, Lou Cooke has done a pretty good job of talking about what's going on at the federal, or excuse me, at the governor's office level of what resources are available. But if there are any questions or resources that you need us to take up for you in my office, please don't hesitate to reach out. Talking as well about one of the, I guess, the unintended consequences of this shutdown, and I guess something that might get forgotten by a lot of people. John probably got the same letter I did from the president and CEO of a healthcare system. Hold on just a second. Colt's trying to talk to me on the chat. Let me see what he's saying. Okay. John talked a little bit about the healthcare system. You know, our healthcare systems right now, particularly our small systems throughout Northwest Ohio that we rely upon an awful lot, are struggling right now. And even though they're open, even though, you know, we would think that they would have some revenue coming in as a result of all of this, the truth of the matter is they're not doing well. And especially when you talk about the small independent health systems, of which there are many across Northwest Ohio, they're not doing very well. And if we lose those, we're in dire straits. And so I would echo John's sentiment that we need to open up our healthcare systems ASAP, potentially before May 1st, in the event that it's possible, to be able to get people back in to see their doctor, to be able to get people back in to have these healthcare procedures done going forward. So hopefully that'll be taken care of here relatively soon. John touched on this as well. Regulatory reform. This is something that I've been focusing on an awful lot over the last 2 years. John touched on the piece of legislation that we were able to get into the budget as it concerns eliminating 2 regulations for every new regulation. And so regarding that, the system regulatory reform stuff is, I would agree with John that we need to make sure that we do whatever we can to be able to keep a lot of the regulations off that we've taken off at this point. And kudos to John for the nurse anesthetist bill, because a lot of that also deals with occupational licensing and what we're doing in that regard to try and lower barriers to entry in our occupational licensing system. And so we need to do whatever we can in that regard. I'm going to stop talking right now because it seems in the chat that a lot of you are having trouble hearing me, and we can go straight to questions, Colt.
All right. Yeah, Senator, thank you for that. And I do apologize. We're not quite sure what the problem is in regards to the audio, but hopefully we can get that sorted out as we do go to questions. And again, we would urge everyone to put those questions into the chat and we can pose those back out. I did get a comment. I've got to scroll up here. Lou Cooke just commented and said that she wants to remind everyone that we have one of the best state reps and state senators, and they work hard for each and every day in our fighting for us. So thank you to Lou, and thank you to John and Senator McCulley for working for us. And other than that, we'd welcome any questions for the senator or the representative.
Colt, I see someone might have sent it on a private message, but they were asking a question about rural area broadband. Certainly a good topic. I think there's been several bills. There's a bill in the House, and Senator McCall can talk if there's one in the Senate, but there's a bill in the House, and I think once again, this is a good example of something that we're going to have to address, because I think there's going to continue to be work from home opportunities, and things like this, obviously, that happen. I've never done so many video calls in 1 month that I've done here. So I'm hoping that we could make that a priority and fast track that, but it's complicated and it's expensive. And to get rural broadband to the last mile or the final mile can be challenging. And when you talk about rural broadband in the legislature, everybody immediately thinks of Southeast Ohio. They don't think of Northwest Ohio. So certainly we just need to continue to work with our utility companies and our communications companies to move this bill, because I think regardless of COVID-19, I think there is businesses that are starting to understand that they can streamline some of their workforce and work from home policies, and it's only going to make it more important to get this access to high quality and faster internet. And I just want to publicly thank Spectrum. Spectrum quickly put out free internet to students and families in need who did not have it, so they could continue their at-home education. And I appreciate what all of our communications companies are doing to make sure that no child can, to make sure that children can have access to the internet.
Thank you, John. And I will just say from a selfish point of view, I'm both work and study from home, and Sheriff, I guess, can come to the fairgrounds right now and see me here because I have to violate the work from home order to get some of these video things done. And so rural broadband is certainly a priority to me. And I thank you, John and Senator McCulley, for working hard on that. David also put in the chat that he's with Windstream and they're happy to offer to help all businesses. Right now, they are offering a free 90-day HD meeting offer. So thank you, David, for passing that along. And any other questions that we could pose to Representative Cross or Senator McCulley, we welcome those now. Okay.
Being shy this morning. So Cole, let me ask you. Maybe we can get some dialogue going. Any businesses that are on the phone, as we try to open things back up by May 1st, any concerns that the business community is having, things that we haven't spoke about that we should be paying attention to? We welcome that feedback.
I think some questions are coming in the chat right now.
Yeah, and so Senator McCulley, we can hear you much better now. Stephanie Temple asking if there are any updates on the EIDL or PPP going forward.
I think I identified the problem. I had my headphones on earlier, and for one reason or another, it must have been doing something with my microphone. The EIDL and PPP. So the PPP right now is my understanding, at least on the federal level, is that the funding has run out in the first phase. So in order for more loans to come out, we're going to have to see another round of funding approved by Congress, unfortunately. So with all of that being said, the unfortunate thing from all of this is that the banks that were not large banks, the banks that many community banks, of course, that we rely upon in our rural counties, were some of the last to get signed up due to the system that was in place. Some of the last that were to get signed up to be able to administer PPP loans. And the byproduct of that is I think you're going to see, if they ever release the geographic data, that most of the loans and higher even on a per capita basis were going to the urban areas and suburban areas as opposed to the rural areas. And so I hope they reissue some funding for that program, because I don't think a lot of businesses were able to get the funding that they needed, especially in rural areas, if they were working through a small community bank, unfortunately. And I know that's not the case across the board, but I think the issue was if you were a small community bank that didn't necessarily operate regularly within the SBA space, it took you a week and a half, 2 weeks just to get your registration process to be able to take care of those loans. And I know there's a bank, for example, up in Henry County that about Monday or Tuesday of this week was just then able to start processing loans. And by that time, the funding had all but run out. And so hopefully they'll issue another round of funding, because I know there are a lot of businesses out on the vine right now. The EIDL, I'm told from talking with some professionals, is another option on the table. The EIDL, however, that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. The EIDL, however, is not forgivable. And so you will have to pay a loan. I believe the payments can be deferred for up to a year, but I think it's something that's definitely worth looking into going forward. John, do you have anything else you need to add to that?
No, we just need Congress to, turn on the printing machine and start printing some money.
Yeah. Another question, what do you foresee as the beginning phase of opening the businesses around May 1st? I don't know the answer to that. I think the governor will probably let us in on that in the next day or two. However, I will say it's probably going to be the businesses that present the least risk as far as spread, and businesses that are essential. I would say healthcare has to be up on that list, I'm sure, of things that will open first. Other businesses that you can think of that are probably not very risky will likely be the businesses that are in that first phase. I would imagine it will probably follow somewhat closely to what the president laid out as far as the businesses in his plan are concerned. So I would say look to the businesses that present the least amount of risk, or the businesses, quite frankly, that are similar to the businesses that are already open and operating effectively under social distancing guidelines. And so, the example I like to keep bringing up, if you're an auto dealership, most auto dealerships, from my understanding, their sales offices are closed during what's going on right now, but their body shop and their mechanics and maintenance areas are open if they have those. I don't know the last time I've ever seen an auto shop as crowded as a Walmart or a grocery store. And so it stands to be reasoned that an auto dealership would be able to open up effectively under social distancing guidelines and be able to operate. It's probably the same can be said for most other retail organizations, as far as ones that are not terribly busy all the time. So I would imagine we'd see those open pretty soon as well. Office spaces, I'm sure, as well, because you can certainly manage your employees much better than you can manage a steady stream of customers coming into your location. So that's just my 2 cents. We'll see what the guidance comes out as.
Colt, let me prompt a question here about county fairs. I see Mark is on the video call here, and our commissioners. I spoke to Director Planda on what's today? Is today Friday? So a couple days ago, Tuesday or Wednesday, I spoke to Director Planda, and I said, hey, we're going to hit county fair season. The governor talked a little bit about it, and I spoke to some members of the Hardin County Fair Board. Certainly, for us in Hardin County, we all know that the Hardin County Fair is a big deal. Our county kind of shuts down, so to speak, to support the fair, and it's really about the kids and their projects. And I just was hoping to maybe get some insight from those on the call today about what the local thoughts would be. I want to be supportive of the fair and see the kids still have a chance to do something, but I'm not sure what that looks like and what kind of support you would need from us. And I think, again, mass gatherings are going to be something that, let's be honest with ourselves. I don't understand how you put 108,000 or 105,000 people inside Ohio Stadium for Ohio State either. So I think there's going to be some challenges we have to deal with, but curious on the local feedback for our county fairs.
I guess we'll start with the commissioners. Any of the commissioners have any insight that they'd like to provide when it comes to the Hardin County Fair?
This is Commissioner Stryker. Can you hear me?
Yes, Tim, we can hear you.
Yes, I guess my concern would be the social distancing. We have plenty of ground at our fairground and would be all for seeing it go forward. So we may have to work on some plans there. There's a lot of acreage out there. My concern is a lot of the show arenas are small, confined areas. So we may have to work on that too, and anything the county can do to help. But that's where my concern would be is yes, masks, yes, gloves, but yes, social distancing also.
Commissioner Crowe, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Not really. I think we're at a much better point here than a lot of the counties since our fair is not until September. We'll see a lot more of the coronavirus responses has been effective and where we're at with vaccines and testing and that sort of thing. But yeah, I do have a lot of concerns. Even outside of the arenas, you have a packed midway, you have a lot of people at food vendors, and it would be a very difficult area to try to manage social distancing. So it's going to take a lot of planning, a lot of thought, and unfortunately, the planning for it has to go into effect a long time before the event, and we aren't going to have the answers to questions until a lot closer to the event. So it's not going to be an easy decision for the Fair Board to make and for the state of Ohio Department of Ag to make on fairs.
And before we open that up to anyone else, I will just mention I was on a 2.5-hour call with the Fair Board last night regarding this same conversation, and we can look for a public statement very soon on how that will be moving forward. And I actually just sent a text to our people at the fair on the fair side, and would look for, I think, some input from the commissioners and John and Senator McCulley if you'd like to be involved as far as what that needs to look like from the county fair side. We are running a little short on time. There are a few more questions I want to get to. This one I think more geared toward John and Senator McCulley regarding it was mentioned by the president that governors could open state by state if they wanted to. There's a lesser percentage of COVID-19 in Northwest Ohio. Is that something that is potentially being looked at? If you can comment to that and opening county by county.
I guess I'll start on that. I believe that if it can be done safely, and this was kind of the focus of my letter on April 13th to the governor, I do believe, and I understand we have limited testing and whatnot, but at the same time, I think the most reliable measurement is to look at our hospitalizations. Our hospitalizations in this neck of the woods, generally speaking, are lower on a per capita rate than most other parts of the state. In fact, when I did my analysis going into writing that letter, I found that 7 out of the 11 counties in the 1st Senate District, which goes from Indian Lake all the way up to Williams County in the corner of the state, 7 out of those 11 counties were in the bottom quartile or the bottom quarter of counties with coronavirus confirmed infections, hospitalizations. 10 out of 11 were in the bottom half, and all of them were well below the statewide average. And so it stands to be reasoned that if we're going to be phasing into opening businesses, that there could be in my opinion, a strong argument made for opening, for maybe those counties being maybe a step or two ahead in that phase in of some other parts of the state, such as those counties that have seen a massive uptick or who had a hot spot prior to many of these social distancing guidelines being enforced en masse. And so I do think that there could be a strong argument made that our counties could potentially see a stronger opening earlier than others. And my fear in that, and part of the reason I feel this way is, if we do wait until it's an all clear across the entire state, to be able to open all of these businesses, my fear is that with every passing day, there's more and more damage being done in our economies. And in many cases, the damage that was done in the Great Recession in the late 2000s was just recently recovered by many of our businesses across Northwest Ohio, by many of our communities across Northwest Ohio. We were just starting to see some of that prosperity that really leads to community growth in many respects. And I would hope that, and I'm pretty confident that will be taken into account, but we'll see what the governor says.
John, anything you'd like to add to that?
No, I think it's a good statement by Senator McCauley. I did see a question on the schools that we could quickly address.
Yes, yeah, we are up against it on the time, but just if we could just very briefly address if we think that our schools will be back in session this year and what changes could look like in the fall. Again, just real quick if we can.
Sure. So my comments to that would be based on the president's guidelines that they put out yesterday. Phase 1 said that they would not return to school. So that I would assume that the students would not be returning to school for the rest of the year if the governors would follow the federal government's guidelines. I don't know when we go from phase 1 to phase 2 by the federal government's guidelines, but I would guarantee, or if the casinos were open, I'd make a bet that that would not take place until summer or fall. I would just say to the parents, and I'm a parent as well, we're going to have to be flexible because we don't know what the fall is going to look like. It certainly could impact sports events and school. So, again, the more we can do our part throughout the summer months, even though it's going to be nice and great weather, the more we do our part to keep the curve down, the more we get into a normalcy into the fall. And I think it's already affecting conversations over college football and pro football and things like that. So I think from what I've been told, that this is going to be something we're just going to deal with over the next 12 months, and as we work back to a sense of normalcy.
And Senator McCauley, do you have anything to add just here briefly?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think the phase in that's going to be necessary to open up some and see if we see an uptick, open up another round and see if we see. I just think that schools would be at the back end of that list due to the nature of them. And I think by that time, this academic year is going to be over. I'm confident and hopeful that we can return to some normalcy in the fall, but I guess just stay tuned and hope for the best.
Very good, and thank you everyone for your questions, and thank you to Representative Cross and Senator McCauley. We move on now to the candidates portion of this presentation, and we will begin with Commissioner candidate, Commissioner Roger Crowe. Roger, anything else to add to today's conversation?
Thank you, Colt. Yeah, it seems like every time I run for commissioner, it's a unique situation. As you might recall, the last election, it came down to many days after the final election and 2 votes. And then this time we've got a very unique election. You saw signs came down early on. When the election in limbo, I didn't see them to leave out signs in people's yards when it might be June before we vote. They're back up now since we have a fixed date. And I just want to encourage everyone, if you haven't already filed your absentee ballot, to please do so. It's difficult in the campaign season when you have no in-person contact with folks. You feel very disconnected with the people in the county when it comes to campaigning. But I think it's important to remember that at this point is not the time to have new people in office. Experience is very important as we transition through the virus situation, and that we can keep Hardin County on track. I think we're in a good position now. I credit that to the leadership that's been there prior to myself and 3 commissioners that are in now. And I would really like the opportunity to continue that leadership, and hope that if you haven't voted yet, that you do vote, and you vote for Crowe for commissioner in the primary. Thank you, Colton. Thank you to the chamber for this opportunity.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for your comments. We move on now. It's my understanding that Commissioner candidate Alan Long is joining us by telephone. Alan, can you hear us? Okay, if Alan is joining us, we understand that his microphone could be muted. If you look at the people panel in GoToMeeting, they just have caller number 1 through 14. So we are not able to unmute your mic for you. I cannot provide any clarity or guidance on how to do that from the telephone end. But it does appear if Alan is joining us from the phone, we cannot hear you. Okay, so it looks like Holly is going to try to unmute everyone. So if we could keep the noise to a minimum while we try to get Alan on the phone here.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, Alan, we can hear you. Yep.
Oh, good morning. Well, thank you very much for having me today, and thank you to Hardin County Chamber and Business Alliance. As you say, I'm Alan J. Long. I'm running for the January 2nd seat of Hardin County Commissioner. The seat's being vacated by Randall Rogers here this fall. I've been a lifetime resident of Hardin County, growing up on a livestock and grain farm. I've owned and managed my own farm for the last close to 40 years. I'm running for Hardin County Commissioner. Since Randall was leaving or vacating the seat this fall, I thought it might be an opportunity to continue in government. I've been a trustee I was a trustee for Cessna Township for 24 years, and I enjoyed being a trustee in the government service. For 22 years, I was on the board of directors for BKP. We built a new building, and we went to the paid squads during my tenure. For 30 years now, I've been known as the fuel man. Currently, I drive for Central Ohio Farmers Co-op, driving a fuel truck. But I started out at Northwest Vinegar Oil Company back 1994, or 90. But graduate of Hardin Northern, and I was employed at Kenton Structural as a welder for 5 years. But I say I enjoyed serving Hardin County. I'd be a full-time commissioner. I'd actually retire from my current job as driving fuel. But I do have a Facebook page, and it's Alan Long for County Commissioner. I've got some videos and articles on there. I encourage everyone to get out and vote. It's going to take a few extra steps. Don't miss nights coming up pretty fast. And thank you again for having me this morning.
And thank you, Alan. We would just ask, we are getting a little bit of noise on the line, so if you are unmuted, we would ask that you mute yourself so we can make sure we're focused on the comments of that person that's speaking. Speaking of people speaking, I guess, we move on now to Commissioner candidate Russ Blue. Good morning, Russ.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. I also appreciate the opportunity to speak with the Chamber of Business Alliance. I am also a candidate for the January 2nd seat. This is something I've wanted to do for quite a long time, but everybody knows I worked for the city for 42 years. So during that time, I could not run for commissioner. And when I retired 4 years ago, my wife still worked for the county. So we had to wait till an opportunity came up. She's now retired also. The opportunity has arisen since Mr. Rogers is not running again. And I would like to fill that position. I feel I've had an extensive background in public service, and I feel that the commissioner's job is another, form of that public service. Like I said, I've worked for the city for 42 years. Chief of Kenton for the last 14 years, and I've been on Kenton City School Board and High Point School Board, 16 years on each board. I served as president and vice president on Kenton City. I have an extensive background in leadership positions with many organizations. I'm part of a lot of state organizations with the Ohio Fire Service, so I have a lot of connections in that area if I need to, bounce things off of people. The current boards and things that I do belong to are the Kenton Planning Commission, Kenton Tree Commission, Kenton Rotary Club, which I served as past president. President of our consistory at the Salem United Church of Christ. I'm president of our Samaritan Partners in Hardin County. I'm on the Kenton City Schools Alumni Hall of Fame Committee. I am a life member and fellow of Ohio Fire Chiefs. And as I said, I feel that with my background in public service, I feel I'm qualified for the position, and I will make it a full-time commitment and making Hardin County safer and opening new jobs and retaining existing jobs. That's part of the campaign as I went through. Economic development is a huge thing, and I would definitely work in the area to bring in more business, more mercantile, anything we can. But I feel stronger about working on retaining jobs. There's something we have to do in Hardin County to retain the jobs that we have. I know it's a big problem with several of the factories and that I've talked to. They have a hard time keeping people, and I think part of that problem is our drug problem in the county. So I would love to work with the sheriff and our local police departments in trying to curb that situation, because I think that's part of the reason we're not able to retain the jobs that we have. Another thing I'd like to see improved is our EMS system in the county. We all know there are some areas that need shored up or repositioned to make it a better service. So I want to work towards that area. I also would just want to encourage you that the primary is going through April 28th. And I checked last night, and there's been over right at 3,700 votes cast in the county. And I do appreciate that at this point. I think we have a lot more that can do, turn in their ballots, get it out and get it turned in. So I just appreciate everybody's support, and thank you, Hardin County Chamber of Business Alliance, for the opportunity to speak this morning.
Thank you, Russ, and thank you for your comments. We move now to Commissioner candidate Fred Rush. I do not see Fred's name on the list of people joined via the internet, so I pose the question to the callers. Fred, are you joining us by phone? You will need to unmute your microphone. However, that's done on the telephone. It does appear we are unmuting the callers now. So, Fred, I ask again: are you with us this morning and able to hear us? Okay. Well, last call for Fred, and perhaps maybe he will be with us here in just a few minutes. So, Fred, we'll ask one more time: are you able to hear us on the phone this morning? Okay, so we will move on to Commissioner candidate Bob Carter, who we also believe was going to be joining us by phone. Bob, are you with us this morning?
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you, Bob. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Well, what a morning it is, and it go from sunshine to snow the next day. I appreciate the invite through the Chamber of Commerce to be able to speak today. I have to agree with the other commissioner candidates, especially Roger Crowe. Yeah, this is a unique situation concerning the voting situation. I hope everybody keeps that in mind, that April or the 28th of this month, that we still are in the running for to finish up the primary then. Currently, I have to apologize to everybody because I have not been able to get out and communicate with a lot of the public because of the coronavirus and campaign. It makes it very difficult. I've been trying to stay on social media, try to encourage people to get out and vote for me. As of now, I'm currently working as a contractor through Hope Recovery or Humidot in Kenton with drug addictions and mental health. Trying to improve what I can in the background in the county as far as the drugs are concerned. There's a lot more that I have in mind and plan that I'd like to do for the county, but in order to do that, I feel that the commissioner seat would be the most valuable place for me to be coming in the future. I have a lot of love and a lot of care for this county and the people in it. I have some ideas that I want to work on and jump on board and try to work with the community and the other community leaders, looking for any resource that's available to me to be able to help improve this county, keep it very viable. One thing is the jobs, which Mr. Blue mentioned, is keeping people working, but we got to bring jobs here. I understand that, and keep people working. And the best way to do it, is try to curb the drug problem in the county, and also work with any potential business, any opportunity that arises. We should be very proactive on welcoming a business into our community to spread our tax base. I'm very concerned about that. For the past 30 years, we probably lost about 3,000 jobs. Of course, you've probably heard me repeat that many times. Even if we had, a silver bullet, would be to gain about half of that back. But it's going to take a little bit of time. I understand that this time, it is a unique situation, and it does take experience, which I do have experience of working with people and legalities of many situations. I was a union president for Ohio Northern University, which I negotiated that first contract when they were outsourced to Sodexo, and basically had around 100 people looking to me to take care of their livelihood and their jobs and their security. I've gotten a bachelor's degree in social service management. Of course, I wouldn't be an addiction counselor if I didn't have those credentials. I also have many other credentials in skilled trades, as journeyman electrician, steam engineer. Every opportunity that came to me to further my education, I've always jumped onto it. I'm not a quitter, obviously, and I always, look for every opportunity to, see a better situation come along. So that's why I encourage people to vote for me. Even though I haven't held the seat before, but I believe that I can do this county some justice and be a great asset to this county.
Thank you, Bob. We appreciate your comments. We have some confusion with Fred here. I did send him a text. I don't think I've heard back yet. I have not. There was confusion about maybe caller 11 or caller 15 that has just joined. We ask again, Fred, are you with us this morning and able to share your comments? All right. Good morning.
Can you hear me?
I can. Good morning, Fred. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you again very much, Colt, for the opportunity, and to the Hardin County Chamber of Business Alliance. We certainly appreciate this opportunity. Here's wishing to everyone there well wishes and yours during this unbelievable time frame that we're going through with the pandemic. It's amazing how things change in our normal daily lives because of it. I have my wife, who's a nurse practitioner, in our next room right now talking telemedicine with her patients for this morning. So it is completely different than what we've been used to, but we're getting through it. So I encourage everybody to be safe and to be healthy. Again, as Colt indicated, my name is Fred Rush, and I am a resident of Liberty Township. Been an Ada resident for approximately 43 years, along with my wife, Teresa. We are part of the threesome, I guess we'll call it, that's running for Hardin County Commissioner that commences on the date of January 2nd, 2021. I have been born, raised in Blanchard Township on our family farm. Quite an opportunity that gave me the ability to live, operate, and eventually manage that farm over the course of the first 50 years of my life. Great opportunity. I graduated from Hardin Northern High School in 1971 and then enrolled into Ohio State graduating from there in 1975 with a BS degree in business administration. In addition, I continued my formal education. I received my MBA degree from the University of Dayton in 1982. And then with this education gave me the ability and enabled me to have a 44-year business career. One of the things that, or what we wanted to talk about is some of the things that or what I have done, and then what we try to maybe bring to the table. For 44 years business career, of that 44 years, about 90% of it, 40 years, I worked probably in the most competitive, challenging, and ever-changing industries that make up our economy, and that's the automotive industry. During that time, I worked approximately 25 years as a plant controller. So working as a controller gives, in this type of an industry, gives good people the understanding of not only accounting and budgeting skills, but also develops leadership and management skills, and then enables you to work efficiently, effectively, making solid and informative decisions, to be open-minded, and also to do what it takes, to roll up your sleeves and do what it takes. I feel this is great, good, sound training for the qualifications for being a county commissioner. And in addition, the backbone of my career and how I've tried to lead my life and my business is basically summarized on how I was brought up and raised in Blanchard Township on our county farm under the heading of two titles, work ethic and common sense. And work ethic is basically what it is: work smart, work efficiently, work effectively, completing your task and doing what it takes. And for me, the best way that I define common sense is structured around two basic principles, and that is to be consistent and to be honest. Consistency and honesty. And by living that fashion and by living that life, you develop integrity. Those are some of the things that I have.
Fred, I really hate to interrupt you, but you are nearing the end of your 3 minutes. Just wanted to prompt you for any final comments you'd like to make as we round out this time, as we are running over.
Okay. Just wanted to let everybody know that we do appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, and also offer the opportunity that please do go and vote if you haven't done so far through absenteeism. We are doing everything we can to get this information out to people to vote. It's greatly appreciated, and it does help all of us, all of the candidates accordingly. So with that, I do appreciate that, and appreciate your support behind the endeavor of me running for county commissioner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Fred. Thanks for your comments. And we thank everyone for joining us. We did go a little bit over, and I do apologize, but certainly some good conversations had today across the state and then across the county. So we thank everyone for joining us. Thank you to our presenters and our candidates, and thank you to our sponsors for making this event possible, as always, and thank you to the great team at the Chamber for always putting together great programs for us here in the county. We wish everyone health and safety as we go along, and if you could do a sunshine dance, I think we're all due for some warm weather. So thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your Friday and a great weekend.